So there is a ceasefire in Gaza, but the consequences of the past 2 years and the 8 decades almost of occupation remain unresolved. Hostages will return and have returned, and Gaza needs to now begin the slow path to reconstruction. We speak this morning to Dr. Gershon Baskin, a peace negotiator, to uncover some of what happened behind the scenes that resulted in this particular ceasefire. Dr. Baskin, a very good morning to you, South African time, and welcome.
Good morning to you, and Juma Mubarak.
So you've mentioned that this ceasefire could have been reached almost a year ago with the 3 weeks deal. At the time, why did Israel and Biden resist a resolution?
At the time that Hamas agreed to end the war in 3 weeks and return all the Israeli hostages in exchange for Palestinian prisoners, and Hamas already said that it is willing to step down from governing Gaza, there was no interest in Israel of ending the war. This is what the message I got back from the Israeli negotiators. When I conveyed the 3-week deal, which was written in Arabic and in English, and I had voice messages to go along with it, the Qatari and the Egyptian response was that they needed an American buy-in in order to move it forward. But the American response, when this deal got to the desk of President Biden, was that his team was working on a proposal that Biden put forth in the end of May, which was a partial ceasefire for 60 days, a partial release of the hostages, not an end of the war. And it was very difficult to get the American people who were involved in the negotiations to even consider it. They were so invested in their own bad deal, in my mind, that they were trying to advance, that they wouldn't even seriously look at the possibility of a different deal that could end the war.
So Trump is obviously beating his own drum, and others have praised him, including yourself, I understand, for being more decisive than Biden. His critics, though, argue that he wanted a deal even before he got into office, and that the understanding or the assumption was that Israel would do whatever Trump forces them to do. Why is it that he wasn't able to secure a deal before he got into office, and it took him the better part of the year after getting into office?
Well, he did secure a deal before he got into office. He let Netanyahu know that he wanted a ceasefire before he entered the Oval Office. And on January 19th, the day before he began being president of the United States again, we went into a 60-day ceasefire deal. The deal included the agreement that by day 15 of the deal, the parties would begin talking about a permanent ceasefire, which would conclude by day 30. But the 60 days passed by, hostages were released, Palestinian prisoners were released, but there was no deal on continuing the ceasefire into a permanent ceasefire. At that point, Prime Minister Netanyahu made his first visit to Washington. I was very hopeful that Trump would do what you said, that he would impose the end of the war on Netanyahu. But at that point, what happened instead is that Netanyahu convinced the Americans that Israel's successes in the region, in Lebanon, in Syria, in Iran, would bring to a success in Gaza as well, and Israel would bring Hamas down to its knees and Hamas would surrender. This was very appealing to President Trump and his kind of mentality, that there would be a surrender of the party of Hamas of Gaza, and he gave Netanyahu a green light, which the war began a week or 10 days later with the Israeli mission of destroying the rest of Gaza City, and the 2 big refugee camps in the center of Gaza, Nusrat and Deir al-Balah. The Americans never gave up this idea that Hamas could be defeated, but after the Israeli failed assassination attempt of the Hamas leadership in Doha on September 9th, Trump understood that American national security interests and financial interests of the United States, and maybe of his own business family, were in jeopardy because of the Israeli attack, because everyone believed that Trump gave a green light for Israel to attack in Doha. But Trump had to immediately dissociate himself from that attack, and that eventually led to the 21 points, which was issued, put out on social media, bringing the Arab countries and Muslim countries to agree to the plan, calling Netanyahu to Washington after the General Assembly meeting, making Netanyahu apologize, basically humiliating him before the world on television, apologizing to the Qatari prime minister. And then Trump told Netanyahu that the war is over, that the United States would bring home all the hostages, but Netanyahu would agree to end the war, and that's what happened. Then he had to nail Hamas into the same deal, and he strong-armed Hamas through the Egyptians, the Qataris, and the Turks, and created reality on social media. And that's how we got to Sharm el-Sheikh with the signing of the deal. The first time ever Israel and Hamas sitting in the same room when they initialed the deal at 2 o'clock in the morning. And then the Sharm el-Sheikh summit that Trump convened to enlist the international community to support the process.
So some Trump supporters have claimed that he should be given the Nobel Peace Prize for securing this ceasefire. Some reports indicate that you share that view. Critics say that even if we go by what you've explained, that he bought into Netanyahu's view that they would get Hamas to surrender, that would be political naivete. If the attacks on Qatar were carried out without his authorization and blessing, it would mean the tail is wagging the dog. And that aside, does a ceasefire alone warrant a peace prize? What about the structural violence, the occupation? What about accusations of Trump's complicity in terms of his first term in office, in as far as the occupation is concerned, and his complicity in the months of his second term, the continuation of funding, the diplomatic backing, and the list is long, as you know.
Look, President Obama, who I supported wholeheartedly, won the Nobel Peace Prize for doing nothing. Donald Trump ended the war in Gaza, and this is not peace, and the occupation hasn't ended. And we have a long road ahead of us before we do actually see peace and justice in the Middle East. But nonetheless, ending the war saves thousands of lives of Israeli soldiers, of the Israeli hostages, and thousands of Gazans. And this plan is not just the end of the war, but it's actually the beginning of the reconstruction of Gaza, the creation of a new government in Gaza, the chance of the Palestinians to breathe for the first time in many years, the end of the economic blockade on Gaza. There'll be the opening of the Rafah crossing for people and goods to move in two directions. An international force will be coming to Gaza soon after a Security Council resolution is passed, hopefully next week. This is unprecedented in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. We've seen one unprecedented act by Trump after the other. And believe me, I'm not a supporter of Trump, but I recognize what has been done here has never been done before. I don't think we've seen a projection of American power of this kind since the days of Dwight Eisenhower. And it was directed in the conflict that I'm directly involved in, engaged in, and I have great appreciation.
Is it not premature, though, to call it the end of the war? Yes, many have said it's
the end of the war,
right? But it remains to be seen whether these long list of hopes actually materialize. And at the same time, even if Trump has achieved what you said he has achieved, what about the complicity? Do we just whitewash that and say, no, he must get the Nobel Peace Prize?
Good questions. Listen, I believe that the war is over. I think that the ceasefire will hold. It's very fragile, but I know that the Americans are committed to it. I know that the Turks, the Egyptians, and the Qataris are working very hard. They're supposed to be going to Gaza to help retrieve the rest of the bodies. An international conference is going to be held, co-sponsored by Egypt, to raise the international commitments for the rebuilding of Gaza. This world doesn't have absolute justice in it, and we have to seek maximum justice. And complicity is a very big question. Biden was complicit in the war. A lot of other European countries were complicit in the war and the killing of Palestinians. Certainly, Israel needs to be held responsible for the consequences of the war crimes that it committed in Gaza. This is all very true. But right now, from my perspective, and I don't represent anyone but myself, the most important thing is the killing has stopped, the bombing has stopped, the winter is coming to Gaza. It's a cold and wet winter. 2 million people are homeless today. We have to ensure that temporary housing is built for them, that there's fresh water to drink, that there's electricity for them, that there's sewage and hygienic facilities, that there are medical supplies. All this comes before talking about prizes or complicity or international criminal court and everything else. There's real work to do on the ground where the lives of more than 2 million people are at stake right now. And that's what has to be our first concern.
Thank you so much for your time and for chatting to us this morning. We really appreciate it, Dr. Bosch.
Thank you.
All right, it's time for the headline.